studios of WDBO in sunny Orlando, Florida, here's talk radio host Joe Kelly's Behind the News podcast, where Joe and his listeners and guests discuss the most important issues of the day, plus the crazy and bizarre stories of the infamous Florida man. Here's Joe Kelly.
When I was first given this opportunity to host an hour show here in the afternoons, I set out two goals for myself. The first goal is to make the show accessible to everybody. That is, I want to make sure that the subject material, the content of the show is broad appeal and that a lot of people have accessibility to it. I don't want to talk over anybody's heads. I'm not sure I could talk over anybody's heads. But I just want to make sure that the show is accessible. So sometimes we talk about issues that are, lifestyle related or, some simpler to understand issues. And then the other thing the second part that was really important to me in hosting this show was that I don't want the show to be predictable. I don't want standard talking points. I don't want standard arguments. I don't want, standard discussions. I don't want to be beating dead horses, for weeks on end. And that is it. Those are the two-pronged approach for the success of this show. So I'm excited about that. Anybody is welcome here on Orlando's News and Talk with me, Joe Kelly. My phone number is 844-580-WDBO. The open mic is always available for you in the WDBO app. I want to start tonight with a headline that just grabbed my attention today. Yankee Tax proposed by a South Carolina lawmaker. Now, I get a kick out of the word Yankee. When I was a child, when I was like 11 years old, I moved from Washington State to Port Arthur, Texas. And I remember when I showed up in Port Arthur, everybody bullied me by calling me Yankee. I didn't take it hard, but I just had to point out to people that being from Washington State does not a Yankee make. It's the wrong side of the country, bro. It's the wrong side of the country. So a South Carolina state senator wants to hit new residents with a $500 Yankee tax for moving to South Carolina. So do you think we should have something similar here in Florida? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Use the open mic and the WDBO app. The bill is sponsored by Republican Stephen Goldfinch and would require those moving to South Carolina from out of state from anywhere, by the way, not just, your Yankee states, if you will, the New England states. But anybody moving from out of state would have to pay two one-time fees, a $250 for vehicle registrations and $250 for a new driver's license. I would imagine if you have two cars, that means you're going to pay $250 each for your vehicle registrations, so that the Yankee tax could in fact be $750 or $1,000 and not just $500. For anybody who's ever listened before, you know that I have difficulty detecting sarcasm sometimes. I seem to lack the gene that enables me to detect sarcasm. And along that same line, sometimes I can't tell if a lawmaker is just being sarcastic when they pitch a certain bill, like the Yankee tax proposed by a South Carolina lawmaker. Now, what I find interesting is this is from zerohedge.com, and as you get down towards the end of the article, to me this is kind of burying the lead just a little bit, but as Fox Business points out, South Carolina is not the only state trying to slap people with moving taxes. This is what should really freak you out. As California and New York have both proposed legislation to tax people for leaving their states. Are you kidding me? I mean, we want to put South Carolina wants to put themselves on the same level as California and New York. Is that even legal? Is that even constitutional to give people a bill for leaving the state? How dare California and New York propose legislation to tax people for leaving their state? If you want to make people not leave your state, stop taxing them so damn much. It's the taxation that's making them leave New York and California. And to that same end, that's the reason why I don't think South Carolina should be charging newcomers a $500 Yankee tax. I mean, if we're conservatives, we don't support taxes no matter, new taxes, no matter how they're achieved. And I certainly don't think that it is worthy of punishing someone, a punitive tax, because they chose greener pastures in South Carolina or in Florida. What do you think? 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326, or use the open WDBO app. We'll get your calls and comments coming up straight ahead here on WDBO.
Hey, Joe. Instead of calling it Yankee Tax, they just need to rebrand it as impact fees. That way, newcomers, have to pay for the infrastructure.
Yeah, impact fees. What do you guys think? 844-580-WDBO, or use the open mic and the WDBO app.
Hey, Joe, New Jersey has had that tax for a couple years now. Probably about 5 years. That when you leave, it costs you money on your state tax.
It just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. I've had the grace, the benefit of most of my working career. I have lived in states that don't have state income taxes, and so I'm glad could continue to live in a state that doesn't have a state income tax. But the notion of paying a Yankee tax, I know it has been done in the past here in Florida, I'm told.
Hey, Joe, this is James in Deltona. When my father moved here in 1991, they had an impact fee per vehicle back then. I forget what it was, $250 or $500.
And it's part of what the South Carolina lawmaker says. He says, I think there's a rational basis for requiring newcomers to, quote, catch up with the rest of us and contribute to the roads, bridges, schools, and green spaces that the residents have always contributed to. So they're being punished that they haven't lived there their whole lives. I find that to be unseemly. If California and New York and New Jersey and other states want to tax people for leaving their states, that's one thing. But that didn't sit well with me to charge people for entering our states here in the South that they're trying to get away from the high tax of the North.
Hey, Joe, back in the 80s or the 70s, there was a registration fee. We had a Yankee tax here. They came out and said it was unconstitutional, and they gave a bunch of our money back to us. It was a fee for registering, and it was a fee for your driver's license.
I'll take your word for that, but I'll look it up later. But that intrigues me if that was found to be unconstitutional. Meanwhile, the Environmental Protection Agency and the administrator of the EPA, Michael Regan, back in East Palestine, Ohio this week, the site of the toxic train crash, and he is talking tough about getting everything there cleaned up.
At any point the company fails to comply with the actions ordered by EPA, we will immediately step in, conduct the work that needs to be done, and then force Norfolk Southern to pay triple the cost in accordance with the powers granted to my agency.
Now, I have mentioned this in the past here, and I will make the same confession again, that when I was in my youth, and by youth I mean probably high school and maybe the first few years of college, I was the old adage, or some attribute it to Winston Churchill. But if you're not a liberal when you're under the age of 30, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative when you're over the age of 40, you have no brain. And that's kind of I lived that model. And when I was younger, my thoughts leaned more towards the liberal. As I'm older now, my thoughts lean far more conservative. But I remember as a kid in high school and college, whenever a so-called government study would come out, and people wiser than me would say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. You can't believe this." And I would say, "Guys, it's the government. Why would it sounds stupid for me to say it now, but why would the government lie? The government has no incentive to lie." I would think to myself, "Oh, Joe Kelly, you were so naive as a teenager and a 20-something. Oh, I don't trust the government at all on any level these days."
So Joe just asked, do I trust all these different agencies? That would be no, and no.
Yeah.
Anything government, no, don't trust it at all.
I'm like I said, I'm ashamed that I thought the government would be the one agency that we could trust, because they'd have no reason to lie to us. But they have ample reason to lie to us.
Come on, Joe. Were you trying to make a funny? Trust the government? Oh, my God. No, they will never do what's right for those people in Ohio. That was disgusting. But trust the government. Come on, dude. That was a good one.
I can't believe that the EPA and the Biden administration have the stones to act as if the air is still clear, the water is still clean, and there are no safety hazards in East Palestine, Ohio. I mean, that blows my mind. The audacity of the lies that you would tell. There is just no possible way that there is not toxicity in the water, in the air, on the ground, but permeating in everything there in East Palestine, Ohio. I think they're all a bunch of lying liars who also lie, and that goes for Norfolk Southern and the government and the EPA and the Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, and everybody else. I think every single one of them is trying to cover their tushes, and they're absolutely all lying to cover up for their failures.
Yeah, trust the government. Were you trying to start a comedy act?
Yeah, right. I think a lot of people feel the same way tonight.
In regard to the government helping the East Palestine residents, Ronald Reagan said it the best. The 9 most terrifying words you can hear are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
No doubt about that. And I mentioned earlier that sometimes I can't tell when I hear a bill that is proposed in a state legislature or elsewhere. Sometimes I can't tell if they're being sarcastic or not. And a Florida Republican lawmaker, Blaise Ingoglia, has filed Senate Bill 1248, which is called the Ultimate Cancel Act. And essentially, if the Senate bill is passed and signed into law, the Florida Democratic Party would no longer exist. It is a bill that would pretty much eliminate the Florida Democratic Party. While it doesn't mention the Democratic Party by name, it would direct the Florida Division of Elections to, quote, immediately cancel the filings of a political party to include its registration and approved status as a political party if the party's platform has previously advocated for or been in support of slavery or involuntary servitude. Of course, Southern Democrats advocated for slavery during the Civil War. So Democrats would be automatically re-registered. If you're a Democrat, if you're a registered Democrat in the state of Florida, if this bill were to be passed and signed, registered Democrats would be automatically re-registered as having no party affiliation. The Democratic Party officers could reorganize, but only under a substantially different name. And again, I look at something like this and I think, well, wait a minute, is he just trying to prove a point? And I did have a text discussion with Blaise Ingoglia earlier today, and I wanted to get him on the radio tonight to talk about this. Perhaps he's going to join us tomorrow night, but he has an event with Governor DeSantis tonight, so we're not going to be able to get him on the radio tonight. But your thoughts on this plan to eliminate the Florida Democratic Party? I just think that for people who don't pay attention to politics and for all Democrats, I mean, they will see this as an obscene power grab in the state of Florida from the Republicans. And I just don't think people are willing to look into it, read into it enough to find that there could be actual validity to this. And again, that's why I want to talk to Blaise Ingoglia tomorrow night, hopefully, so we can get some more details from him. I'm watching breaking news out of Greece. I know this seems a world away, but 2 trains have collided there. One is a cargo train and another is a passenger train, and evidently they collided head on. There are numerous people dead and twice as many or so people that are injured right now. Again, that's in Greece as 2 trains have collided there. We'll keep an eye on that and let you know if there's anything more to that story. Coming up in a moment, there was a show on ABC called How to Get Away with Murder. And I binged the whole thing. It was Viola Davis, and I loved it. It was a nighttime soap opera, sue me. It was a soap opera, but it was well acted and it was fun. But if you're trying to get away with murder in America, you've got a pretty good chance of actually getting away with murder. I will explain how next on WDBO. Stay right there.
Just when I think that you come to your senses, you come with this a law, advertising this law without any rebuttal, when it's the most unlawful and disgusting law, eliminating the competition, Even though I'm Republican, I'm opposed to that because everybody deserves a chance. And then you come with the how to get away with murder, and I will tell you how. My goodness, man, Joe, Chubby Joe, my God.
Do you really think that I'm going to tell you how to murder somebody?
I just hope in all my soul that you come to your senses and you just don't explain how to get away with murder or advertise that in this Florida full of nutcases that are capable to do it. You know what I mean? So I think you are very out of order if you're going to advertise that thing, just my opinion, I love life and I hate cultists and people that conspire against others, so,
Yeah, lots to unpack there, but here's the short end of this story here. If you want to get away with murder in the United States, all you have to do is commit murder. Because in the United States right now, murderers in America have a 50% chance of getting away with it. Homicide clearance rates. Clearance rates means that an arrest has been made, a case has been closed, somebody has been charged with the offense, it has been turned over to a court for prosecution. Homicide clearance rates have decreased to their lowest level from 71% in 1980 to 50% in 2020. America is now at risk for becoming the first developed nation where most murders go uncleared. And if you don't think that's important information to know, then go ahead and put your head back in the sand. But I think it's important to know that whether it is smarter criminals or dumber cops, our murderers in America are not getting arrested. Half of murderers in America aren't getting arrested. They're still on the streets. You think we should hide that information from you, that you shouldn't know about that? I think that's terribly important to know. That's the kind of information that I want my wife to know. I want my kids to know. I want them all to know. I want your wife. I want your kids. I want you to know that half of all murders in the United States don't get solved. Not at least by the year 2020. Down from a high of 71% of murder rates that got cleared. Now we're down to 50%. That is pathetic. It is scary. It is terrible. If you're just joining us, we're also talking about the EPA and Norfolk Southern and Ohio officials and FEMA officials and Biden officials want you to believe that they're going to do East Palestine, Ohio right. I don't believe that as far as I can throw the U.S. government. There is nothing that the government has done to earn our trust that they're going to actually clean up East Palestine, Ohio.
It's not just the Biden administration, it's also the Trump administration. They all lie, both Republicans and Democrats. Government in general, they lie.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. I don't trust any of them, which is why I don't get people who idolize people like Donald Trump or idolize other lawmakers, people who idolize Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or anybody else. I don't get the idolization of lawmakers. I don't idolize anybody but Jesus Christ. And everybody else I'm suspect of, particularly elected officials. And frankly, I think that should be your position as well. 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app. All right, Paul Cross, I'm going to come back to you there. I don't know if you heard this question today, but have you ever wondered what time it is on the moon?
Wow, that's interesting.
It's never crossed my mind that...
It never crossed my mind either.
That we would need to know what time it is on the moon, but the European Space Agency is now in talks with how to best keep track of time on the moon. They argue that with so many lunar launches planned in the future, that it is time to have a joint international effort launched towards achieving a uniform time on the moon. as I was reading this, I also learned, and so TIL, today I learned that the International Space Station had the exact same problem. There's no time zone for the International Space Station. So NASA had to create a special time zone for the International Space Station just so that they would have a consistent time as that orbiting lab makes its way around the United States.
Wow, that makes sense too, because they're never in the same place. I mean, I've looked up and seen the space station fly overhead, and so there's no way that they could be, jumping from time zone to time zone. That makes perfect sense. But the moon? Could never even thought about that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Cool to think about. I wonder how many different time zones the moon could have. I mean, depending on how big it is and everything. I mean, I know someone knows.
It's gone way over my head.
Yeah, me too. We need someone who specializes in orbital mechanics and that kind of stuff. Right. All right, coming up next here on WDBO, you've heard of Cocaine Bear. Well, get ready for the attack of the meth gator in Florida. Oh, yes, it's happening. I got the deets coming up next. Nobody go nowhere. Well, there were 2 movies that I wanted to see last weekend, and I didn't get a chance to see either of the movies, but I wanted to see Cocaine Bear, and I wanted to see Jesus Revival. Not necessarily in that order, but as fate would have it, the Jesus Revival is not showing at every multiplex, and it wasn't showing downtown, so I didn't get a chance to see that, and then I didn't get a chance to see Cocaine Bear. I'm a little disappointed. Hopefully this weekend I can see one or both. Randy, did you happen to catch Cocaine Bear? Please say yes.
I'm so sorry, I did not. I want to, though.
Did Sophie catch it?
Did you catch Cocaine
Bear?
No, from Sophie either. But I've heard that the reviews have been less stellar and not a good way.
I've also read the same. I have because a lot of people are holding out hopes, me being one of them, that it's kitschy good, that it's campy good, that it could be a cult classic, right? But so many people are just saying it was a terrible movie. But then there's the Jesus Revival movie with Kelsey Grammer, and Kelsey Grammer has in recent times really leaned into his relationship with God and Jesus, and has really started doing some amazing movies, including there's a movie on Netflix, and forgive me, the name of the movie escapes me. Maybe you could look it up on IMDb real quick, but it stars Kelsey Grammer and Kristen Bell, and it's on Netflix right now. And Kelsey Grammer plays Kristen Bell's dad, estranged dad. Go ahead, Sophie. Do you know it?
It's like Father.
It is okay. It's like Father. Actually, it's not like Father. It's like Father. That like is causing me grief here. But the name of the movie is like. Sophie, have you seen it?
Yes, funny enough, with my father.
Oh, and did you like it?
It was kind of morose, a little melancholy, but it was enjoyable.
I mean, I love redemption stories, and there was redemption at the end of that movie, and I am a sucker for a redemption story. I just think that everybody has value and everybody is redeemable, and when I see a redemption story, just like I watched Father Stew over the weekend, and Father Stew was such a great redemption story with Mark Wahlberg. No, that was a good movie. So Cocaine Bear, I didn't get a chance to see Cocaine Bear, but you'll be glad to know that Cocaine Bear has been so successful at the box office, they're already talking about a sequel to Cocaine Bear. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't want to make assumptions here, but doesn't the bear die at the end of Cocaine Bear? And if the bear dies at the end of Cocaine Bear, how do you do a sequel to Cocaine Bear? Unless there's just another bear that happens to have cocaine. So anyhow, it has inspired this low-budget production company called The Asylum. They've announced their newest film, Attack of the Meth Gator, which will introduce a new terror among the countless currently existing ones to the swamps of Florida this summer. So this summer, we're going to have a guy who's known for making so-called mockbuster films, not blockbuster, mockbuster cinematic gems like Sharknado and the Transformers Fall of Man. the asylum revealed the upcoming release of the attack of the meth gator via the company's Twitter account. And it reads, hold our bear, beer, coming for your life this summer. And it has this just very scary looking alligator on it. And the alligator is going to be evidently on meth. Joe Rogan, the podcaster, is suggesting that it is time to get rid of the bald eagle as the symbol of America. You know, the bald eagle is such a beautiful bird, but he calls it a soulless, evil creature that likes to eat dead fish. I will say that the first time I saw a bald eagle eating like a carcass, I thought, ew, that's kind of below our national symbol, isn't it? Could we not feed our national symbol something as gross as a dead animal carcass? But it is what it is. 2 Spanish transportation officials are looking for new jobs after a huge mistake. Can you even imagine this? They had ordered trains that were too big for the railway tunnels in Spain. These 2 officials resigned over the blunder. The train manufacturer noticed the error before the $275 million fleet of commuter trains was completed. Old tunnels in northern Spain that date back to the 19th century are more narrow than modern tunnels. Evidently, nobody told the engineers, and they monumentally botched the job. The mistake will now result in a 2-year delay of the new fleet's delivery. Can you believe that? And out of Virginia, this sickens me. A Virginia man has been seen on home security footage tossing poisoned chunks of meat to his neighbor's dogs over their loud barking. You know, I think all of us at one point or another have been annoyed by a loud neighboring dog. And honestly, at times I've been angry. I was like, oh, I'm so angry that my neighbor's dog is barking. But then if you kind of put yourself in their shoes for a minute, you might have to think, well, maybe the neighbor's not home. Maybe the neighbor is not hearing the dog barking. Maybe the neighbor is at work and they're not aware that their dog barks. And maybe the first part of that is having just a simple discussion with your neighbor saying, hey, I don't know if you know this, but your dog barks when you're gone for the day. But this guy decided to put poison in meat, chunks of meat, and toss it over the fence. None of the dogs ingested any of the meat, but it was all caught on video, and the suspect has now turned himself into authorities. He is facing misdemeanor charges. The neighbor also reportedly left an apology in the mailbox, saying he was bothered by the barking for a long time. I was wrong, mean, and stupid to resort to tossing tainted meat into your yard. The understatement of the year.